the past few days, so many things have been happening. Clearly, Russia's been sending hundreds of drones and missiles combined over to Ukraine in the past 2 days, but that's not what I'm talking about here. In just the past 3 days, we've been getting little bits and pieces of new equipment that Ukraine has been building and using and testing, and then conversations between different countries and what could happen and what they need. And it's all leading up to something extremely massive, something that I don't think people realize the scale of yet until it's fully underway and they all look back and go, oh, that's why all of that happened. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Because I have been putting together all these pieces for the past few days, and I see where this is going. And it all kind of started last week. And I have to put this out there because it's one of those things where depending on where you get your news and how you get your news, you might look at things a little bit differently. And I want you to give me your opinion in the comment section below. It was about a week and a half ago where Zelensky really started pushing the United Kingdom and the United States to allow Ukraine to use long-range weapons to strike targets inside of Russia. Now, if you remember, the United States did allow Ukraine to use certain weapons in the Kursk region if it protects Ukrainians. So if an S-300 or a helicopter or a launcher was over there, they could use certain kind of things. On top of that, we also seen Ukraine use HIMARS in Kursk, taking out all of those bridges, something that happened, but then a few days later, the U.S. finally gave permission for that, and I mean, by that point, Ukraine already had it, so I'm assuming that they had already gotten the permission before they even started doing any of that. But that's where we started getting some of the chatter. Because the United States, they're still considering it. The UK kind of said, we would love for Ukraine to use our stuff, but we're waiting for the United States to say whatever they want, and then we'll say what we want. But this is where Zelensky comes in, and we start realizing that he is saying and doing certain things to scare the Russians into hopefully coming to the negotiation table and finally come and, hey, we'll do this, we'll figure this out, negotiate real actual things versus what Russia's been doing before, which is just demand things. Because you know as much as I do, Ukraine wants to destroy as much of the Russian military as possible. They also want to take out all of the oil fields, because if you destroy the equipment, then Russia would have to buy stuff. If they don't have oil, they don't have money, they can't buy stuff. So they're happy to eliminate stuff. But they're still stuck into only firing certain things into Kursk. And Russia knows that, hey, okay, Ukraine has taken out these airports here, these air bases, these depots. We'll push the airplanes just a little bit further back. It adds maybe 5 to 10 more minutes on their flight time, but we could still attack Ukraine. Ukraine wants that buffer zone. And they want Russia to be scared that, hey, we have weapons that could destroy you if you do X, Y, and Z. Just some of those weapons are U.S. weapons or UK weapons, Storm Shadows, ATACMS, that Ukraine can't use yet. And at this very moment, at least according to Politico, there is a discussion going on about Ukraine using long-range weapons. And I understand why this article was put out there, but it also shows the frustration that Ukrainians have. Because as the article goes on, it says that Kyiv is to present the United States with a list of targets in Russia. And it wants to use that list, those approved spots, to hit them with the long-range arms, any kind of long-range missiles that the United States could provide to Ukraine. And in the article, it talks about this is not the first time. This is actually an updated list that they are giving to the United States. And you start realizing is that, like, okay, this is the updated list. Wait a minute, they have to keep giving you new lists and you have yet to approve the other ones? But that's maybe part of the frustration. The other part is, since day one of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the United States was always dragging their feet. In the beginning, they didn't want to give them anything because they could be taken. When they weren't taken, they gave them a little things. Then, obviously, Zelensky, I don't need a ride. I need weapons. Please give me the weapons. They gave them some weapons. They worked great, but they needed more. The United States waited 3 months. Finally gave them more. It was too late. Every time that Zelensky or Zelensky at that time needed something and came to the United States and the UK and said, we need this stuff now, there was like always a 3 to 6 month wait period, at which, by the time they got them, it wasn't needed anymore. And I see what Zelensky's doing here. and what Syrskyi's doing here. They know that if they do not put pressure on Russia with the threat of a certain weapon, Russia will continue this. And obviously, Ukraine does not want this to continue much longer. Even Zelensky said that comes September or this fall summit, they want to have some kind of ironclad peace deal, something that they can present, have the upper hand over Russia, and have the other countries go, Russia, you're not winning here. You need to sign this. You need to get on board with, you're not going to win this. You have to now negotiate. What makes what I'm saying even more credible is the fact that Russia is still attacking Ukraine. Obviously, they still see them as a threat if they're going after the critical infrastructure. But I think that Zelensky knows that if Russia knew that Ukraine had other kinds of weapons that could strike them without permission from the United States or the UK, then that might scare them a little bit, which is why over the past few days we saw that new missile drone get announced, which could hit a ton, dozens of air bases that Russia has, and oil depots, which, by the way, I think we're at day number 11 that one was hit not too long ago. We got that missile. Then we started seeing things about a new ballistic missile, which actually was just announced today. Zelensky said that they carried out a successful test on the first domestic-made ballistic missile, adding that it may be too early to talk about it, but I wanted to share it with you. If it's still in testing, why do you announce these things? Obviously, the drone missile, they used it in occupied territories, and it worked. This went up and it worked. Why would Zelensky come out and say these things? It's because he knows that potentially the talks with the United States could take forever because the United States always drags its feet. And Zelensky needs to put pressure on the Russians. And the only way of doing that is to announce that we now have things that we don't need permission for. We could take our own missiles, our own drones, our own Neptune missiles, and fire them deep into Russia and not have to really worry about the United States and the UK saying, oh, those are our weapons. You can't do that. You shouldn't be able to do that. And it's that threat that everyone is hoping that Russia looks at and goes, we're in trouble here. We need to sit down and talk. And I think that we're at a point in time now where Ukraine's been developing their own stuff for 2 years. They're testing. They're getting ready to move forward. It is time for Ukraine to strike things deeper with their own weapons if the Storm Shadows and or the ATACMS are not approved. That way, the world can see that Ukraine is using their own weapons, striking only military things, trust Ukraine enough to say, fine, you could finally do this. They'll put enough pressure on the Russians to finally come to the table. Which brings me to my final point in this video, and I know this seems like a little rant. It's just I'm connecting all these dots, and I'm seeing the frustration that Ukrainians are going through. They just want to add the pressure to Russia to get them to come to the table. Since right now, obviously, Ukrainians are pushing in Kursk, even though it was just announced that Russia's bringing 30,000 troops to that area, which is possible. There really is no proof just yet, though that's what is being told. But now we're finding out that there's going to be a NATO-Ukraine Council meeting very soon. Kyiv requested this. It came on just suddenly. It was actually just announced. It says 7:33 p.m. Ukrainian time, so that was about 3 hours ago that this had just came out. And in this press release, it says that the NATO Secretary General will convene a NATO-Ukrainian Council meeting tomorrow, August 28th, at Ukraine's request. In this, it doesn't really technically say what they're going to be talking about. It could honestly just be about the past 2 days. Ukraine lost a lot of critical infrastructure. That's why the United States announced they're going to give Ukraine some of that, some other kind of equipment to fix things. And so it's one of those things where this could be a meeting just on, critical infrastructure. It could be on striking deeper into Russia, or it could be something else that we don't know about. And we really won't know about until finally after tomorrow's meeting and everyone comes out and they tell everyone what happened. And so this is where we sit. There's a lot of movement. A lot of things are happening at the same time. And like I said before, I think we're looking at a point where Zelensky wants to put so much pressure on the Russians, whether it's just the threat of something or actually doing something, so that they can finally come to the table and say, hey guys, we want to do something here. Now, will Russia actually do that? Do they want some kind of peace deal? Well, according to Zelensky, Russia wants 30% of Ukraine. That's what they want. That's not going to happen. Russia wants the water access. They want to be able to have Crimea and all the other areas that they stole, and that's off the table. If Russia truly wanted to end this war, they would have just said, oh, we're sorry, we're getting out of here, pay everything they have to pay. I mean, there's a lot they're going to have to fix and pay, but they don't want that. And so I think that's what Zelensky has learned, that he has to put pressure on them somehow. The Kursk region was great to take over so that it makes Putin look really bad. And now in Russians' eyes, looking at him, he doesn't look like a good leader. I mean, heck, the Russian news says that having Ukrainians in Russia is the new normal, which is just like, oh, we're going that way, are we? Oh, okay. That makes sense at all. All that being said, tomorrow's NATO summit, or at least this one, which is an express summit, is going to be very interesting. As soon as I get any information, I'll be sure to make another video on here and break it down again. Do make sure you follow me on TikTok at Joey Contino News. We're doing something really big in the next few weeks, something that you're going to want to subscribe to this YouTube channel, because it's going to be something that I'm going to be like, wow, I can't believe we're doing this. And it doesn't involve me being in America. It's going to be interesting. Anyway, if you haven't done so yet, please subscribe, turn on notifications, and give this video a thumbs up. I'm Joey. Stay safe. See you later.